Now, the frantic 911 call made after Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife were found dead has emerged. A male caller is heard telling the dispatcher he's found two bodies in a property in Santa Fe in New Mexico.
The courtroom battle over Gene Hackman's estate had already been intense, but no one was prepared for what came next. Just when it seemed his legal team had controlled the situation, a shocking development changed everything. His own attorney walked away. With new explosive evidence emerging, the case took a sinister turn, forcing Hackman's children to question everything they thought they knew. Had their father been deceived? Was his entire fortune stolen before anyone could stop it? And most importantly, who was behind it all? The breaking point. The courtroom was tense, filled with reporters, legal analysts, and spectators eager to witness the unraveling of a case that had gripped Hollywood. Gene Hackman's legal team had fought tirelessly for months, countering allegations of financial fraud and estate manipulation. The defense had remained confident, dismissing claims of wrongdoing and treating the accusations as baseless attempts to tarnish Hackman's name. But the case took an unexpected turn when new evidence emerged, sending shockwaves through the proceedings and shaking the foundation of Hackman's defense. Financial documents, once thought to be routine estate records, revealed inconsistencies that pointed to widespread misconduct. Wire transfers to offshore accounts suggested an elaborate scheme, while alterations in Hackman's will raised questions about the legitimacy of his final wishes. Investigators uncovered documents that appeared to have been tampered with, casting doubt on whether Hackman had full control over his financial decisions in his final years. The evidence was damning enough to force an immediate reassessment of the case. The most stunning development came when Hackman's attorney, a well-known Hollywood legal strategist, abruptly resigned from the case. His withdrawal was not a quiet departure, but a highly publicized statement citing ethical concerns and an inability to continue representing the estate in good faith. The courtroom fell silent as the news spread, leaving both Hackman's family and the public to wonder what had forced such a drastic decision. With the attorney's departure, Hackman's legal defense crumbled, leaving his children reeling from the realization that the case was far more complex than they had initially believed. They had fought to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs, but the sudden resignation of their father's attorney suggested that they were facing a battle against forces far more powerful than they had anticipated. Media speculation ran rampant, with theories ranging from fraudulent financial dealings to coercion and forgery. Some suggested that Hackman had been manipulated in his final years, his estate used as a tool for financial gain by those closest to him. Others argued that the actor had knowingly engaged in questionable financial maneuvers, leaving his legal team unable to defend his actions without facing personal repercussions. The timing of the resignation raised even more questions. Had the attorney discovered something so incriminating that he had no choice but to walk away? Or had external pressure forced his departure to prevent further exposure of a deep-rooted conspiracy? The uncertainty surrounding the case only fueled further public intrigue, drawing more scrutiny to every aspect of Hackman's financial affairs. With no lead attorney to represent the estate, the case fell into disarray. The judge, recognizing the gravity of the situation, called for a temporary halt in proceedings to allow Hackman's legal team time to regroup. But Hackman's children knew they had to act quickly. Every delay increased the risk that key evidence could disappear, and every moment of hesitation gave those responsible for manipulating the estate more time to cover their tracks. The fight for the truth had reached a critical turning point. Whatever their father's attorney had uncovered was big enough to make him walk away from one of the most high-profile cases in Hollywood history. If it was significant enough to dismantle Hackman's defense, it was significant enough to rewrite the entire narrative surrounding his estate. Hackman's children were left with a single urgent mission: to uncover the truth before it was buried forever. Hidden files. The resignation of Hackman's attorney had sent shockwaves through the case, but it was only the beginning. As soon as he stepped away, the FBI and Hackman's children turned their attention to his law office, hoping to uncover what had driven him to abandon his client so abruptly. Within days, investigators obtained a warrant to search the premises, and what they found inside sent the case spiraling in an even darker direction. Hidden deep in the attorney's archives were confidential files that had never been disclosed in court. These documents contained records of private financial transactions, estate amendments, and communication logs between Hackman's financial advisors, legal team, and unknown external parties. Buried within the stack of papers were emails discussing last-minute changes to Hackman's will, changes that had been made when he was already battling cognitive decline. The documents raised serious concerns. Some had been signed mere weeks before Hackman's passing, yet their content suggested that he had willingly removed his children from inheriting his fortune. Legal experts reviewing the paperwork immediately noted glaring inconsistencies in Hackman's signature, leading them to suspect forgery. If the will had been altered without Hackman's full consent, it wasn't just a case of missing money anymore, it was fraud. More troubling still were records of large wire transfers made to anonymous offshore accounts. The transactions had taken place discreetly, with small, untraceable withdrawals accumulating into millions over time. The pattern was eerily similar to other cases of estate fraud involving wealthy individuals who had been isolated from their families in their final years. Hackman's children, already struggling to come to terms with their father's exclusion from his own legacy, now face an even more chilling possibility. Someone had systematically drained his estate while ensuring they had no legal claim to challenge it. Investigators suspected that the altered will was only part of a broader scheme, one designed to quietly redirect Hackman's wealth before his death. If true, this meant that whoever had orchestrated it had been planning the deception for years, carefully dismantling Hackman's financial security under the guise of estate management. The idea that their father had been used in such a way was a devastating realization for his children. Among the seized documents was an unmarked USB drive discovered in a locked drawer within the attorney's office. When forensic experts examined its contents, they found something even more alarming: recordings of private conversations between Hackman and his legal advisors. Some of these discussions had taken place in the final months of his life, when he had been at his most vulnerable. In one recording, Hackman's voice could be heard questioning the changes being made to his estate. He appeared confused, uncertain about why such drastic financial moves were necessary. His advisors, however, assured him that everything was in his best interest, brushing off his concerns. The recording ended abruptly, but it painted a picture of a man being pressured into signing away his fortune. The existence of these recordings suggested that someone had been keeping evidence of the fraud, possibly as a safeguard or leverage against those involved. It also meant that Hackman had not gone along with the changes willingly. If the case had been murky before, it was now undeniably sinister. With this new evidence, the FBI intensified its investigation. Hackman's children, once merely fighting for their rightful inheritance, were now fighting to expose the individuals who had taken advantage of their father in his weakest moments. What had started as a legal battle had turned into a quest for justice, and yet the deeper they dug, the more disturbing the truth became. The fraudulent will was just the tip of the iceberg. Someone had orchestrated this deception with chilling precision, and whoever they were, they had gone to extreme lengths to make sure no one would uncover their plan. But now the plan was unraveling, and it was only a matter of time before the mastermind behind it all was revealed. A betrayal unveiled. Discovery of the hidden files had changed everything. What had once seemed like an inheritance dispute had now turned into something far more sinister, a calculated scheme to strip Gene Hackman of his wealth before his death. The shocking recordings confirmed what Hackman's children had feared the most. Their father had not willingly disinherited them. He had been manipulated, coerced, and ultimately deceived by those closest to him. Forensic experts continued to analyze the recordings, uncovering even more disturbing details. One file in particular stood out. It captured a private conversation between Hackman and his financial advisors just weeks before his passing. His voice, weakened by age and illness, carried a tone of unease. His advisors spoke to him in measured, reassuring tones, subtly dismissing his concerns about estate revisions. They downplayed the significance of the changes, framing them as minor adjustments that would protect his assets. The recording ended before Hackman could ask more questions, but the intent was clear. He had not been in control of his own financial decisions. As the FBI delved deeper into the paper trail, they uncovered something even more alarming: secretly recorded video footage from inside Hackman's private residence. It had been hidden within a folder labeled as estate planning records, but its contents revealed a level of manipulation no one had expected. In the footage, Hackman sat at his desk, appearing confused as documents were placed in front of him. His legal and financial advisors surrounded him, subtly guiding his hand as he signed papers that he clearly did not fully understand. The exchange was unsettling, showing a vulnerable man being exploited in real time. Hackman's children, upon seeing the footage, were left shaken. The images of their father, once a strong and commanding figure, now frail and uncertain, signing away his legacy under duress, were almost too much to bear. They had spent years assuming that their estrangement had led to their disinheritance, but now they knew the truth. Someone had deliberately erased them from his will, and their father had been powerless to stop it. The FBI's investigation now had a new focus. This was no longer just about stolen money. It was about uncovering the individuals who had orchestrated the entire fraud. The manipulation had been methodical, stretching back for years, and those responsible had ensured that Hackman's children would have no way of reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. Who had the most to gain from Hackman's downfall? As agents cross-referenced financial transactions with Hackman's legal documents, they found a name that had appeared repeatedly, one that had remained hidden behind layers of shell companies, discrete payments, and legal loopholes. This individual had positioned themselves as a close confidant of Hackman, someone who had gained his trust over the years and had been given unrestricted access to his estate. Hackman's children had never suspected them. The betrayal, when revealed, hit harder than any legal battle ever could. This was someone their father had trusted completely, someone who had been working against him the entire time. With this revelation, the case took on an even more dangerous tone. If this person had gone to such extreme lengths to manipulate Hackman's estate, what else were they willing to do to protect themselves? Hackman's children had no choice but to prepare for what came next, because now they weren't just fighting for their father's legacy, they were fighting against someone who had everything to lose. The attorney's silence. The resignation of Gene Hackman's attorney had raised suspicions, but the deeper the FBI probed, the clearer it became that his departure was more than just a legal maneuver. Investigators had already uncovered fraudulent activity surrounding Hackman's estate, yet the timing of the attorney's sudden exit suggested he knew something far more damning, something he wasn't willing to be a part of. When the FBI tracked down the attorney to a secluded coastal retreat, they found a man who no longer carried the confidence of a high-powered legal expert. His demeanor had changed. He was restless, paranoid, and visibly shaken. His withdrawal from the case had not just been a strategic move, he had been running from something. He refused to speak to authorities, citing attorney-client privilege, but investigators knew he was holding on to information that could unravel the entire case. With mounting pressure, the FBI presented him with the evidence they had collected so far: the altered will, the manipulated financial transactions, and most damning of all, the hidden recordings of Hackman questioning the changes to his estate. The evidence was overwhelming, proving that Hackman had been coerced into making decisions that benefited a select few while stripping his children of their rightful inheritance. Yet even with all this proof, the attorney remained silent. He knew that revealing too much would place him in the center of a scandal that extended beyond Hackman's case. His involvement, whether direct or indirect, had made him a liability to those who had orchestrated the fraud. There was a fine line between keeping his career intact and becoming a scapegoat for the powerful figures behind the scheme. Despite his reluctance, forensic analysts began uncovering documents that tied the attorney to questionable estate dealings beyond Hackman's case. This was not the first time he had been involved in suspicious legal maneuvering. He had represented multiple high-profile clients, many of whom had passed away under similar circumstances, leaving behind rewritten wills, missing funds, and unanswered questions. Hackman's children grew increasingly convinced that their father's case was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. If this attorney had played a role in multiple estate fraud cases, then the corruption extended far beyond their family. It was no longer about one man's stolen fortune. It was about an entire system built to prey on the wealthy and vulnerable. The FBI intensified their efforts, using their findings to pressure the attorney into talking. They made it clear that if he continued to protect those responsible, he would become the primary target of their investigation. For the first time, the attorney's facade cracked. The weight of what he had been protecting had finally become too much. After a long silence, he gave them a single warning, one that sent a chill through the entire investigation. He told them that the people behind this scheme were more powerful than they realized. This wasn't just a financial fraud operation, it was an intricate network of individuals who had spent years perfecting their methods, ensuring that their crimes remained undetected. He hinted that if they dug too deep, they might uncover secrets that others had been willing to kill for. The statement sent shockwaves through Hackman's children. They had always believed they were fighting for justice, but now they realized they were up against something far darker than they had imagined. If what the attorney said was true, then they weren't just chasing missing money, they were chasing a criminal empire that had been operating in the shadows for years, and now that empire was beginning to take notice of their efforts. The hunt for the mastermind was officially underway. The hunt for the mastermind. With the attorney's chilling warning hanging over them, the FBI and Hackman's children realized they were dealing with more than just a fraudulent will. This was an operation that had existed long before Gene Hackman's estate became its latest target. The question was no longer who had stolen Hackman's fortune, but how many others had fallen victim to the same scheme. Investigators turned their attention to the financial records connected to Hackman's missing wealth. Every offshore transaction, every hidden account, and every legal loophole had been carefully orchestrated. The layers of deception had been built over years, possibly decades, by someone who knew how to manipulate both the legal and financial systems to their advantage. At the center of it all was a name that had surfaced in multiple estate fraud cases, someone who had never directly appeared on paper but whose influence could be traced through private correspondence, financial transactions, and legal dealings. This individual was not just an expert in estate law but had ties to high-level banking institutions and offshore tax havens. They had built a career on siphoning wealth from the rich under the guise of financial advisement. The FBI obtained access to encrypted communications exchanged between Hackman's former legal and financial team. What they uncovered was disturbing. Discussions about strategic estate restructuring and final phase financial transfers suggested that Hackman had been part of a much larger system of asset redirection. His estate had been systematically stripped away while he was still alive, ensuring that by the time his children had a chance to fight back, it would be too late. One message stood out among the rest. It was a simple directive sent to Hackman's financial advisor just days before his passing. Finalize the transition, no loose ends. It was a clear instruction, one that indicated the scheme had reached its conclusion. The only thing left to do was ensure there were no witnesses, no leaks, and no evidence that could be traced back to the true orchestrators. Hackman's children realized the full extent of what they were up against. This wasn't a single act of fraud, it was an entire system designed to strip vulnerable individuals of their wealth without raising suspicion. If they wanted justice for their father, they would have to expose something far bigger than a single financial crime. But as the FBI closed in, a new complication arose. The person they were searching for, the mastermind who had orchestrated the theft of Hackman's fortune, had vanished. Just like the money, they had disappeared without a trace, erasing the evidence. The investigation had reached its breaking point. The FBI had gathered enough evidence to confirm that Gene Hackman's estate had been manipulated, his wealth stolen, and his will altered under suspicious circumstances. Yet the one person who could tie it all together, the mastermind behind it all, remained beyond their reach. Authorities scrambled to track down leads, launching an international search that stretched across multiple financial institutions, shell corporations, and legal firms. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that this scheme had targeted more than just Hackman's family. Other high-profile estates had been subjected to similar manipulations, their wealth drained through the same channels. Hackman's children refused to let the case go cold. With the weight of the media behind them, they pushed for legal action against the banks, financial advisors, and estate planners who had been complicit in the fraud. Their father's name had been dragged through scandal, and they would not let his legacy be defined by deception. The pressure worked. One by one, those involved in the scheme began to break, revealing details of the operation in exchange for reduced sentences. The mastermind, once untouchable, was finally identified, someone who had spent years building a criminal enterprise under the guise of legitimate financial consulting. They had played the system, moving millions across borders, securing assets under false identities, and ensuring that their victims had no way to fight back. When authorities finally caught up with them, they were living in luxury, untouched by the chaos they had left behind. The arrest was swift, but the trial that followed was a spectacle. Hackman's children watched as the full extent of the scheme was laid bare in court. Testimonies from other victims painted a picture of a network that had thrived on manipulation, deceit, and betrayal. In the end, justice was served, but at a cost. The stolen fortune was never fully recovered, buried deep in international financial systems that would take years to untangle. Hackman's estate remained in limbo, his children left with little more than a legal victory. But for them, the fight had never been about the money. It had been about clearing their father's name, exposing those who had profited from his vulnerability, and ensuring that no one else would suffer the same fate. As they stood outside the courthouse, watching reporters scramble to capture the final moments of the case, they felt a bittersweet sense of closure. Their father's legacy had been restored, the truth had been revealed, and for the first time in years, they could finally move forward. But as they walked away, one thought lingered. How many more had fallen victim to the same scheme without even knowing it? And worse, how many more would? Justice had been served and Gene Hackman's name was cleared. His children had exposed the truth, but the scars remained. The case proved that even legends weren't safe from betrayal. Money could be stolen, but the truth would always surface. And for those still hiding in the shadows, their time was running out. What do you think about this shocking case? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more updates on Hollywood's biggest scandals.